Commerce. Don't ill-treat me, pet dingo, Ringo. Don't ill-treat me, pet dingo. He can't understand your lingo, Ringo, so don't ill-treat me, pet dingo.
Good afternoon from Castle Goring, from Mickey and from me. I'm afraid there's an awful lot of ground to cover today, so I'm going to plunge right in without further ado. Okay? Question 1 is from I.M., who wants to know if I agree that Harry will wait for the Queen to die and then in his new book will tell us that she was always eating her boogers in private. Sorry. Mickey, this is outrageous. Sorry. I trust you all know what boogers are. Oh gosh, you couldn't make it up. You really couldn't make it up. Well, I have to say, it's a very irreverent question, but it really does go right to the heart of the matter, and it really does hit the nail right on its head. There's no doubt about the sentiment, and really, it's so graphic, and it's so wonderful, and it's so intrusive, and that, I have to say, is what Harry and Meghan did to his grandmother over the naming of their daughter. And yes, I think, I have to say, I agree. Of Harry's and Meghan's previous conduct, when the Queen dies, if he's writing a book about her, it's going to be revealing the equivalent of the fact that she did pick or didn't pick her boogers in private. We might also be treated to our digestive clearance in the way that they proudly treated the world to Meghan's digestive clearances in funding freedom and finding freebies. Not an enviable prospect for anybody in the family to have to contend with, is it? But I think you've got it in one, I am. Marcy Newbold says, couldn't Her Majesty lock them up in the Tower of London and let the tourists pay to look at them? Oh gosh, I have to say, it's good that we are on an irreverent note, isn't it? It keeps things entertaining. It lends levity to what is basically not such a lightweight subject. And we really do have to use humour in life to get us through not only the good bits and the boring bits, but the bad bits. So, if I may continue, sorry for interrupting myself, and let the tourists pay to look at them. Very good revenue stream. Just wondering, I mean, not so, lots of O's, very long ago, she could have had their heads lopped off. Makes you long for the old days. Lots of love. Oh, halcyon days, my dear, halcyon days. When everything was much neater and cleaner. And monarchs didn't even need to lop off the heads, although they could, and they often did. They could have simply said things as Henry II said, "Oh, do please rid me of this and I'm now paraphrasing, pestilential archbishop, and his knights duly obliged, with rather disastrous results, it has to be said. And I suspect that if the Queen tried anything such as Martin Newbold is suggesting, that she would most likely have to take figurative penance the way poor Henry II did. So I don't think it's a very good solution, but my goodness, it does make one sort of hanker after halcyon days, doesn't it? Shannon Brown says, I actually believe Harry would like to live a more ordinary life and would be happy to do more actual humanitarian work, unlike Meghan's version, like his mother did. Lady C, do you not find it ironic that Harry has ended up with someone who seems to be using the things she knows he genuinely wants to manipulate him and get what she wants, which is the exact opposite? Do you not find it interesting that he's ended up with exactly the opposite of what he really wants? Do you think Harry is aware of the irony in any of this? And if so, why doesn't he do anything about it? That's actually a very serious and a very penetrating question, and actually an acute observation as well. Yes and no. I think when you're dealing with disturbed people, you're often dealing with contradictory elements within their personality. And good Harry, pre-Meghan Harry, the Harry everyone knew and loved, who had a dark side, but the dark side was kept where it should have been, in the shadows, instead of being paraded out in Hollywood style for all to see. Yes, that is what he wanted. And that, I'm sure, is what positive Harry still wants. But Meghan has uncorked the bottle and let the genie out of it. So Meghan has unleashed the other Harry. The Harry that we are now all witnessing and don't like. The Harry that has reduced good Harry's popularity from number 2 to last, or second to last. Quite an accomplishment to achieve in a very short space of time. It has to be said, Harry is obviously, and I've said this before and I'm going to have to say it again, addicted to Meghan and desperate to please Meghan and desperate to do what Meghan wants. But make no mistake about it, Meghan has also pressed Harry's buttons, and Meghan has released that within Harry that he was suppressing and should have continued to suppress, but has ceased to suppress. So we now have this unedifying spectacle of two greedy, self-righteous, as the Jamaicans would say, grabbinicious, pseudo-royals posing on a weekly basis, violating their privacy and our space with endless newspaper and headline and media grabbing ploys to make money, to pose as humanitarians, while actually being a very much the profiteers of the humanitarian system I mean, for instance, if Harry and Meghan, and I just make this as an observation, if Harry and Meghan are to be believed, one of the primary reasons why they went to Hollywood and left, or as they would put it, stood down from being senior royals, was to achieve financial independence. But I don't know if you've noticed it. Every time they cut a deal, they say the money is going to charity. Duh. How does that work, Harry and Meghan? If all the money you're making is going to charity and none of it is going into your pockets, where are you going to achieve independence? And how are you going to achieve financial independence? Clearly, something isn't adding up. And I think we all know what's not adding up. Hence, Shannon Brown's question. Because what is not adding up is that we've all figured out that a goodly proportion, very handsome proportion, is going to go directly to maintain their splendiferous lifestyle. Not even a royal lifestyle, a pseudo-billionaire lifestyle. I mean, what a progression to go from being a genuine prince to a monkey billionaire. I mean, honestly, really very pathetic. But the money's coming from somewhere, and it's coming from the deals. And since everything they do is for the good of humanity and humanitarian, which of course it's not, it's all marching dressed up as humanitarianism, you have to ask yourself, to what extent was Harry ever genuinely humanitarian? People who are genuinely humanitarian do their good deeds in private, in dark corners, unsung. Once your good deed is done for display, you are akin to the Pharisees and the Sadducees that Jesus Christ warns us about in the New Testament. People who pose as being righteous, while their hearts are hearts of stone and they worship at the altar of Mammon. Do I think Harry's aware of the irony of it? I doubt it. I don't think Harry's bright enough to be aware of the irony of anything. I also think he's sufficiently arrogant and self-deluding and lacking in insight to never turn his questions inwards. You notice, even in all of his psychobabble, it's never Harry embracing his lot and doing what he needs to do to make his life better. It's blaming everybody for any suffering that he has had to endure, notwithstanding the fact that any fool knows that every human being who has been put on this earth is damned to suffer. The Catholics call it original sin. Other religions have different interpretations, but every religion, every philosophy understands that no human being can get through this life without suffering. It is the human condition. And no, Harry, not everybody's to blame. Sometimes you're to blame. And even when others are to blame, it does not behoove you to turn your insights outwards when they should be turned inwards, because ultimately we can't really change very much except how we deal with things and look at things. That includes ourselves. Big secret, Harry. Big secret. Ourselves. Ilana Million says, if it's true that Harry's wife has her eye on federal politics in the US, perhaps she should pay attention to what Middle America thinks. Very good observation. Sunshine Sachs isn't going to get her elected. She and Harry should also remember that celebrities normally have a very limited shelf life. Next week, someone new and therefore more interesting will come along. It's happened over and over and over. I wonder if you would agree with this, Lady C. Yes, I do agree with this. I think Meghan has achieved beyond her ambitions. As people often do. You know, I think she's been very fortunate. She has seized the day, always. Carpe diem. Grab it. But I don't think that she envisaged that she would be a princess of the United Kingdom and a royal duchess. I think when it came along, she grabbed the opportunity for all it was worth. But I don't think that was actually an ambition of hers. I think it was, a dream, possibly. She certainly was obsessed with royalty from she was a little girl, hence why, of course, she knew nothing about Harry, although she was an expert on Diana. And, of course, one of Diana's sons, if I remember, Mickey, isn't Harry a son of Diana? Isn't he the younger son? Yeah, he is, isn't he? Yes. You know that. I know that. But Meghan didn't know that. Yes, so believable. So believable. I have been told that she does have ambitions to be President of the United States, and I believe it. I suspect she is beginning to realize that it's not going to be as readily achievable as she thought when she was plotting and scheming in Nottingham Cottage and Frogmore Cottage. I think she's now got enough of a dose of reality to realize it's not going to be quite as easy as she thinks. But this is somebody who spent the better part of a decade rattling about Hollywood, doing anything and everything to try to get to become a star. She never became a star. She became a minor ensemble player in a minor cable television series. That's not to take away from her accomplishment, because it was an accomplishment. But she achieved that goal. Read what she said in her blogs. There was no knockback that was so severe that it was able to remove those incisors from her ambition. Who knows? Maybe she feels like this about the presidency, because I'm not sure that the Meghans of this world are actually capable of proper analytical thought. They are capable, because you see, if you study the subject of the personality type that she presents herself as being, she doesn't really have the emotions that you or I would have. She therefore doesn't perceive things as you or I would perceive them. She therefore doesn't have recall of events as you or I would have them. Because without a proper emotional structure, and I'm not now referring to the sensationalism that goes along with that personality type, I'm referring to proper deep emotions. They perceive everything differently, think differently, have very flattened emotional effects. Although they're great dramatists and every little thing is blown out of proportion, in a way that if you actually did genuinely feel it, you wouldn't behave like that. Does she have this ambition? She certainly did. Does she still have it? Who knows? And with the Meghans of this world, it doesn't behoove you to ask, because you're never going to get an answer that actually is indicative of the reality of what they're thinking or feeling. So let us see what happens. I would have thought she's far more likely to go down the Jackie route without any of the Jackie benefits and without any of the Jackie personality or gifts and capabilities and the positive sides of Jackie. I'm not a fortune teller, but I think Meghan Markle and a billionaire's yacht are a very handsome fit. Robert Stevenson says, "What does our fascination with them say about us?" What a wonderful question. I'll tell you what it says about us, in my opinion. That we're human, that we're interested in the human condition. The only people who would not be absolutely fascinated by this situation would be people who don't have human feelings. Narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, seriously disordered personalities, very mentally ill people. I don't think they would have a great deal of interest in this. The average person will. If you look at the body of literature, it's not fabulous stories about wonderful people who did wonderful deeds. That is a small segment of the body of literature, a tiny percentage. The largest part of the body of literature, the greatest segment, the hugest proportion, is about things that are not right, trying to make them right, the penalties of indulging in wrongness. Nobody is interested in reading a book that, basically, it's a wonderful story, everybody's marvellous, everybody's happy, everything's good, nothing ever went wrong. Yawnsville. Why do you think murder mysteries are so popular? Why do you think stories about evil people are so popular? Why do you think stories about destructive people are so popular? Why are we fascinated? We are fascinated not only because we want to be reassured that they're going to get their comeuppance, but also because a little bit of us is in them. They are living out what we would never allow ourselves to do. We are living vicariously through them. That's one of the attractions. Another attraction is we have a moral code and we love to see people get their comeuppance. And as we track and trace their actions, we are ready and waiting for when they are going to get their comeuppance. It even happens when we are looking at nature programs. Say Richard Attenborough. You know, the lion is stalking the antelope. Is the antelope going to escape? Is the lion going to succeed? It is actually very reassuring that we find situations like this fascinating. It says a lot about the fact that we have a heart, a soul, a brain, and that we want to be interested in other human beings. Marcia Barry says, the first time I heard that Meghan Markle, I started to learn about her personality. You quicker than me, my dear, I confess, you quicker than me. She opened my eyes. I didn't know about this personality, but I have met many. They are deadly. That to me is why it is of interest. Yes, to follow through on the theme of the last question, we're fascinated by people who are different from us. We're fascinated by people who horrify us. Horror is a perfectly desirable reaction in certain situations. And the reaction is what hooks us as well. The only thing that bores us ultimately is indifference. If we're indifferent to something, we have no interest in it. But if we are interested, even if we're horrified, chemically, it is hooking us, because we are also chemical beings. Erin Irix says, upset that their daughter is not in the line of succession in a racist institute? Doesn't seem to make sense. No, it doesn't seem to make sense, does it? It really doesn't seem to make sense. But I suppose in their skewed way of thinking, we are too dumb to have noticed that they deplore the institution. They deplore the cruelty of it. They deplore the humanity of it. But, God darn it, you've got to make sure that we are a part of it when it suits them. The immaturity, the exploitativeness, the opportunism, the lack of responsibility, the actual flagrant using of it all, unconscionably and shamelessly, is also what makes it so interesting and entertaining. Holly Rozek says, hello, Lady C, looking lovely as always. I think she's referring to the previous. I hope I'm looking okay in this one too. You may have gone over this and I might have missed it. Is there any possible way that number 6's wife could do a complete turnaround with her narc personality disorder and gain understanding of how horrible she has been treating people and be able to make full amends, not honeymoon amends? I do love you guys. I do love you. You're so witty and fun and entertaining. Make a permanent change to the bright side. No, it's not possible. With help, if, and I'm now going to take it off Meghan onto anybody who exhibits narcissistic personality disorder traits. It's not curable. If they crash and burn to the extent that they need therapy, they go into therapy and use every tool they have learnt in therapy to advance their narcissistic exploitativeness. What happens often with narcissistic women who are attractive is that as they get older and their looks fade, and even when their looks do not fade that much, the power of their allure definitely fades, because allure is actually linked to the procreative cycle. So after the late 40s, no matter how well preserved a woman is, no matter how beautiful she remains, she loses her universality of appeal. She loses her biological lure because it is tied to her procreative abilities. And I'm using the word biological in a particular meaning because this is YouTube and I don't want to use the last three letters that the Sussex's name ends in. So, and at that point, they usually substitute the sexual part of their game playing and the attention seeking that they gain benefits from as women when they are younger. They usually substitute that with how worthy I am, how wise, how knowledgeable. I mean, my mother used to do it, and I have to tell you, they're sometimes very good at it. I mean, Mummy could be extraordinarily wise. When she said things, it behooved you to listen because she was highly intelligent and she actually read people very well, as narcissists very often do. But it was all an act. It was all a pose. It was yet more attention grabbing. So, are we going to be treated to the worthy Meghan? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. We might even see her forego the possibility of ever having a tiara and end up having a halo instead. Just don't take it to the bank. $3 bills don't get cashed in. RLR21 says, having watched another person trying to figure these two out, this saying came to mind. Oh, that God would give us the gift to see coursers as others see us. Robbie Burns. I doubt Harry or his wife have ever heard of this poet. Never mind his wisdom and humour. My question, Lady C, is, would they combined even understand this enough to be humbled? Sorry. He then says, yes, I do hear you laughing already with loads of laughing symbols. And yes, you know me too well. Well, as a little aside, Robbie Burns, for what it's worth, to those of you who don't know, is one of Scotland's great poets. And I'm going to give a little bit of a big up now to the Argyll family's castle in Scotland, Inveraray Castle. It's spelled Inveraray, but it's pronounced Inveraray, for those of you who think the spelling doesn't accord with the pronunciation. No, it doesn't. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to visit to those of you who ever want to see a fabulous stately home that is every child's idea of what a castle should be. It's a far more magical castle in terms of the evocation of a child's dream of a castle than this castle is. And it's magnificently done. They have artifacts from Robbie Burns there on display because they gave refuge to Robbie Burns at a certain stage of his life. Now, to answer the question, no, I don't think Harry or Meghan have any insight. I don't think they're ever going to possess insight. I think it is one of the features of the mental and personality conditions from which they suffer and which are the result of us having to endure what their antics are, but also of what makes them so fascinating. Because they're not straightforward, but they have no insight. Are they ever going to be able to look at themselves and see, I am defective? Oh no, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be, any defect I have, it's because you are responsible. But I'm a wonderful, perfect, worthy person. Or, as Harry has recently put it, he's not going to write about the prince he was born, but the man he has become. You see the elevation? He's gone from being a prince to being a demigod. He simply spells it M-A-N, but he rarely feels it's G-O-D. No, no, no is the answer. Jacqueline Osborne says, yes, what I want to know is why is the Queen giving in to their demands of a royal christening if they've stepped back from royal life and duties? Why do they get it both ways? Why is the Queen giving in to their demands? Well, the christening hasn't taken place yet, number one. And number two, even if the christening does proceed, it is the birthright of the child. You can't penalize the child for the actions of the parent. All children of a prince or princess or a member of the British royal family, notice how I put it, they all have the right to be christened in one of the royal chapels. They have the right to be married in one of the royal chapels. They have the right to be buried from one of the royal chapels. It does not behoove us or the royal family to want to strip a child of a right that is basically a privilege, and that child might need rather more than the child from a well-adjusted background. I would have thought that Harry and Meghan's children are going to need every advantage they have. The one consolation I have where there is children are concerned is, I remember Basil saying to me once, in terms of how I survived my nightmare of a life so well, he said, because it was so bad, you were either going to sink or swim, and you chose to swim. That's usually why people who have terrible childhoods, awful parents, awful experiences, usually end up in better shape as adults than people who are mollycoddled and softened, and because life equips you for life, because we all endure vicissitudes as we get older. And I have to say, I found my worldly advantages tremendously helpful in making my life a better life and making me survive and flourish. And I say good luck to those 2 kids. They're gonna need every advantage they have. Take it from me, I know what I'm talking about. Peter Acton says, it is ironic that BetterUp has as one of its leaders, in quotation marks, a man who's made a living out of causing mental health anguish for his family and nation. Good luck with your London office in the city he hates. Yeah, well, we all know now, Harry's told us, he hates London. Every time he comes into it, he starts to quiver and quake. It's like every time he sees a flashbulb, he's in horror. You wouldn't know it from the smiles and the way he courts the camera, and has always courted the camera, may I point out. And yes, it is ironic that we have somebody who, by his own account, is mentally ill, and who, by our observations, is a deadbeat, disloyal, self-promoting, greedy, opportunistic, stabber of family, friends, and nation. So I take it back. Family and nation. He's not stabbed his friends, but he stabbed his family and his nation. So I take back the friends bit of it. Actually, he hasn't stabbed his friends, but he's frozen most of them out. So that's a form of betrayal, I would submit. Just going off his conduct. Yes, isn't it ironic? I'm waiting to get to the other side of life. And the first thing I'm going to do is rush to a lecture from Joseph Stalin. And then I'm going to rush to a lecture from Adolf Hitler, unless I have missed any of the pearls of wisdom of how wonderful it is to love humanity and never do an injury to others. I'm going to go and listen to what Mao Zedong and Pol Pot have to say on the subject of love thy neighbour. Oh, I don't think I need to do any of that. I'll tune into what Harry and Meghan have to say. In a far lower grade way, the message will be the same. Lots of word salad from people who are ill-equipped to speak about what they're speaking about. Bestie says, "Hi, Lady C, love your videos. I do not believe for a second that me, again, had a miscarriage. I think she wanted to copy Chrissy Teigen because it got that bully a lot of attention, and I think she fabricated it. I also believe that she is hiding pictures of her kids because she is waiting for a higher payment. I think it is all about money, and the supposed miscarriage was all about sympathy. Can I get your thoughts? Thank you. You can get my thoughts. I find it deeply surprising that a woman who goes to the length that she does to protect her privacy would have revealed something quite so private. So I agree, it was done for sympathy and most likely for financial gain as well. Because even if the financial gain isn't immediate, the more they ratchet up their renown, is the more they hope to charge for their time and input. The fact that they're playing a very bad hand doesn't alter the fact that this is what they're hoping. Did she have a miscarriage? I have absolutely no idea, but I would have thought a healthy skepticism where Meghan and Harry's claims are concerned is always advisable, because as we have found to our cost, even just looking at that Oprah interview and looking at Harry's interviews, very, very difficult to tell when it's fantasy and when it's reality. It's dead easy to tell that it's all playing well for their attention-seeking needs. But in terms of true or false, I wouldn't be taking bets on it. I certainly wouldn't be putting down anything but one of those $3 bills that are so evocative of the realities that they impose upon us. As for the children being kept out of the public eye, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. And yes, I think it's tied to money as well. It's most likely tied to some TV thing they're going to be doing, and they are thinking that everybody is going to be so desperate to see what the children like that everybody will pile in. You know, it rather reminds me of something Eli Wallet once told me. Eli Wallet, to those of you who don't know, was Bernie Kornfeld's partner in iOS. For a time, Eli and Bernie were two of the richest people on earth. And Eli was speaking about a girl who said no too long. And he said, you know, the thing about people who think that if they hold back so long that they're going to maximize their advantages is when you get it, you're usually so fed up of waiting, and you have such increased expectations as well that you don't value it the way you would have valued it had your interest been satisfied earlier. I pass that little bit on for what it's worth. Susie Raffkins says, Dear Lady C, do you think it's strange that we haven't seen any photographs of Lili? Interested to hear your thoughts. Keep up the good work. I love your videos and look forward to watching them. Bless you. It is strange. It's very strange. But we're dealing with very strange people. they march to their own tune. The band is playing another tune and we're marching to it. They are oddballs, but not in a positive way. You know, to be a truly wonderful character, you have to have an ideal combination of unique, individual, conventional, and ordinary. If it tilts too much in one direction or the other, you're either a weirdo or a bore. Andy Hughes says, and I am ending not on a question, but on his observation. After trashing the royal family publicly, I don't think our Queen has anything to worry about with anything those two have to say. People will see through them for the liars they are. I think the royal family will come out stronger, not weaker. To a large extent, I have to tell you, Andy Hughes, I agree. The only thing that disturbs me is that some people are sufficiently punitive that they want to see Harry and Meghan suffer for what they regard as their crimes against the royal family and against the British people, and also against her father. But you know, revenge is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. I don't think we need to worry too much about vengeance for Meghan and Harry. I think they are our best revenge. Their characters, their personalities, their hopes, their schemes, their ambitions will assure those of you who want punishment for them to rain down upon their heads in a plenitude the like of which you will have never seen before publicly. Wait for it. I think it will happen. If it doesn't, it means that the whole exercise has been aborted before the final denouement. But I'm not so sure that they are not going to end up being worthy of our pity, even at the very moment that we shy away from sympathizing. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you have, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and keep the questions coming in the comment section. They are invaluable. They are also sometimes extremely entertaining and sometimes very edifying. Your contribution is invaluable and it is much appreciated. Thank you so much. God bless.